Grounding techniques are super useful for coming back into the present moment, for regrounding, recentering when you are feeling emotionally overwhelmed, either way too agitated or shutting down. Grounding can really help you self regulate, and grounding techniques are easy, free, and always accessible. Now, this video is part of my 3-week mini-series, the mini-series. If you haven't seen the first week, no problem. This will still be useful. But if you would like to go back and do the first week, it is right here. I'll link it. And this is a 3-week program that if you practice these techniques on a daily basis, and I do give suggestions as to how to do that, I do believe that in 3 weeks, you will feel less stressed, more present, more peaceful. And these are techniques you can use throughout your lifetime. And this video will walk you through the 4 most powerful grounding techniques that I have utilized while working with my clients for the last 20 years. I'd like to invite you to check in with how you're feeling right now. So notice whether you're feeling very present, whether you're feeling grounded, centered, and let's put it on a scale. So let's say 10 is like completely grounded, 100% present, and 0 is not at all. You're either completely shut down or you're climbing the walls. So where do you fall right now before we begin any of these techniques on a 0 to 10 scale? Just note the number. And then let's start with the first technique. So I'm sitting on a meditation cushion, but you could be sitting wherever you want, or standing, or laying down. But let's make sure that your stomach and your diaphragm have the room to take a nice, deep diaphragmatic breath. So take a breath in, and then a nice, slow exhale out. Very good. And then one more, just nice, big diaphragmatic breath in, and a nice, slow diaphragmatic breath out. All right. Now I'd like to ask you to look around the room that you're in and notice 3 blue objects and name them out loud if you're by yourself, or if you're walking in a park or you're outside, name them in your head. But just notice 3 blue objects that you can see right now and name them. So for me, blue water bottle over here. I have a blue face mask over there. And then the blue in the painting behind me. Now, next step, name out loud or in your head, again, if you can't say it out loud, but if you can say it out loud and you're alone, that's best. What's your favorite color or one of your favorite colors? Just name it. Now, same thing, look around the room you're in or the area that you're in and find 3 things that are that color and name them out loud. And then shift your attention to your being in this space. And just notice you are in this space with those objects around you. And as you notice that, see if you feel a little more centered or grounded. Now, this is an externally orienting technique, right? We are looking for things outside of ourselves to orient in the present space and time. And of the techniques I share today, find the ones that work for you best. So when I was working with people one-to-one in my office and they might dissociate because we were dealing with incredibly difficult topics, or they might have felt very, very anxious, the technique of looking around the space and finding the different colored objects really would help people orient back to where they were, take their mind off of whatever it had gone to and bring them back. So it's a really easy technique. And as I said, it can be done anywhere. So the next grounding exercise I'd like to share with you can be called 5 senses. So we're going to go through our 5 senses. So again, just starting with a nice, deep, diaphragmatic breath. I'd like to ask you to notice what you can hear right now. Really bring your concentration to the sounds that you can hear. and notice the farthest away sound you can hear. And then notice the closest sound you can hear. And see if you can bring in these sounds non-judgmentally, just noticing, without a lot of story about what you like or don't like. If you're in a noisy city, just hearing the sounds of the bustle outside. If you're somewhere where you're hearing noises that annoy you, just see if you can just listen non-judgmentally. And then I'd like to ask you to see what you can smell, if anything. And just really breathe in any of the smells that are around you. And then take a moment and look around and see what you can see. Just really notice. So if you're in a very familiar room, just really look. Take a moment and really just look around. Notice each piece of furniture, each object. And again, non-judgmentally. Letting go of any thoughts you might have about how the room looks. Just notice the objects in the room. And then touch. If you're somewhere where there's a fan or outdoors with a breeze, just notice what that feels like on your skin. If you're not, you can create your own sense of touch by giving yourself a little bit of a hug and noticing what the fabric feels like. And then there's taste. So I encourage you to use the senses of smell and taste to ground. Now, if you had a cup of tea with you, you could really breathe in the smell of the tea, like really inhale it with as much concentration as you can, and then also taste it. And if you're in a place where you don't have a cup of tea, you don't have something to smell and taste, that's fine. You can use the other ones. I personally find sound to be an incredibly grounding tool for me. So really bringing my attention to sound, near sound, far sound, in between, everything I can hear. I find that very orienting. So again, you can find which one of these techniques really works for you. The third technique I'm going to share with you today is an energizing technique. So that might sound a little odd because we tend to think of grounding as something that brings us down physiologically, but sometimes we might actually need to energize in order to ground. So in particular, if you're somebody who tends to go into freeze mode, dissociate from the moment, really detach, energizing techniques might be the ones that help you ground. So I invite everybody to stand and try this with me, but we're just going to stomp our feet on the floor. So I just invite you to really stomp your feet. And I'm doing it loudly enough that you can hear it. So I want you to stomp your feet, if you're in a place that you can, loudly enough that you can hear it. So this is very energizing, but in a sort of funny way, a little bit of a fun way, lighthearted. Notice it, feel a little bit of play, right? A little sense of energetic play can be both grounding and energizing. So the next piece of the same energizing type technique is to throw a pillow or a ball, like play catch with yourself. And I was actually laughing at myself because the only thing I have in my office actually is my meditation cushion, but I'm going to throw that. So if you have a nice soft pillow, or if you have a little bit of a tennis ball or anything like that, just take a moment, whoops, throw it and catch it. So let's check in again. After doing those energizing techniques, how present do you feel right now in this moment? How much do you feel like you actually are really, truly here where you are? So just notice, maybe come up with a number on that 0 to 10 scale where 10 is like 100% completely present and 0 is not at all. Has that shifted for you so far? Now I want to share with you about the pillow exercise. When I was seeing clients in my office and they would really kind of dissociate if we were working on very difficult topics, then I would take one of my couch pillows and we would play catch. And that act of playing catch, very, very grounding. So I wanted to film part of this video on grounding techniques outside because it can be so grounding to actually be on the ground. So as you can tell, I'm right now on my deck, but I'm going to move down to the ground in a moment and walk you through a technique called hands and feet that you can do outdoors or indoors. Either one is fine. Given how windy it is outside, I figured I would do this as a voiceover. So feel your feet on the ground and just bring as much of your attention as you can to your feet on the floor. Notice how your feet feel, if they're in socks, in a shoe, or if they're on a sandal or directly on the ground or carpet, whatever's under your feet. Notice what it feels like with as much of your attention as you can. And then bend your knees a couple of times, just a little bit of pushing into your feet, into the earth, really making that connection. And then if you would like a little bit of mini stomping, and then take a deep exhale, and then tighten all the muscles in your feet on the inhale and release. And again, tighten all the muscles of the feet on the inhale, and then exhale and release. And then let's bring your attention to your hands. Now see if you can bring as much attention as you can to your left hand and then to your right hand. And then to both hands at the same time. Really see if you can feel them both at the same time. And then you can rub your hands together, feel the warmth that's generated. Clasp your hands a bit and release again, and notice how they feel. Tighten and release. Tighten and release. Tighten your hands and release with the exhale. And then shake your hands out. And then take a moment and just notice how you feel, having paid this much attention to your hands and your feet. And thank you for joining me for this exercise. So my suggestion for using these grounding techniques, it's wonderful if there's a way that you can keep a notepad of the different techniques or the ones that work for you best. And that way, if you find yourself in a place where you're really feeling ungrounded, overwhelmed, you can access them quickly. So I would have these techniques on hand for those situations. And I would also suggest practicing at least one of these techniques every day this week. So add the grounding technique onto the diaphragmatic breathing. So from week 1, we were working with the diaphragmatic breathing, and I recommended that you do the diaphragmatic breathing 4 times a day, 4 rounds of breath in and out to the count of 4. And I just do the 4, 4, 4 to make it easy to remember. And that you do that diaphragmatic breathing, not when you're particularly stressed, but just kind of regularly throughout the day so that it becomes a more normal way for you to breathe. So continue to do the diaphragmatic breathing and add on one grounding technique. Now, these techniques take almost no time. So this is more of an effort of remembering to do them than it is having to allocate. You don't have to allocate 20 minutes a day for these techniques. So just to give yourself a means of remembering, you could set your phone to go off like 4 times a day for the diaphragmatic breathing, and then you could put a different tone on a reminder to do the grounding technique. But try to do the diaphragmatic breathing and a grounding technique every day this week. And next week, I will be releasing the 3rd week of the mini series, and we'll have 1 more week to work. And in the meantime, if you'd like more, I have a webinar on rewiring your brain for joy and confidence. Now, these techniques that we're using, the diaphragmatic breathing, the grounding technique, and the technique I'll release next week, these are all part of rewiring your brain to be a more peaceful place, a more enjoyable place to live. And what could be better than that, right? So rewiring our brain away from the negative habitual patterns towards positive calming patterns can be done. It truly can be done. So I do have a webinar. It's free. If you click show more in the notes under this video, you will see a whole bunch of links. Join us for the webinar and tune in next week. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. Helps a lot in all sorts of ways. And thanks for being on this journey with me.